Hey T-Squad, it's Kirsty and buckle in, because this one is wild even by today's standards. Donald Trump is suing the BBC for $5 billion. Yes, $5 billion with a B. And all because of a single video edit that blew up into the kind of crisis most newsrooms have nightmares about. Trump says the BBC deliberately stitched together parts of his speech to make it look like he was calling for violence. The fallout? Instant and brutal. Two of the BBC's top bosses walked out in disgrace. The BBC sent a personal apology straight to the White House, and now the corporation is staring down a lawsuit so big it could literally wipe it off the map. But this isn't just Trump versus the media round 500. This is a story about how a few seconds of footage, cut in the wrong place, created an international scandal, sparked a leadership meltdown, and kicked off a lawsuit that could reshape political media forever. So grab your tea, because we're about to unpack exactly what the BBC did, why Trump is furious, and whether he actually has a case, or if this is the biggest political power play of the year. To understand how he ended up in billion-dollar land, we have to go back to the source, a panorama documentary looking at Trump's political legacy. In that documentary, the BBC played what looked like one continuous quote from Trump's speech on the day of the Capitol riot. "We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell." On screen, it sounded like a single, clear instruction. Go to the Capitol, fight. No room for ambiguity. Except, that's not what he actually said. The BBC had stitched together two parts of the speech that were spoken nearly an hour apart, and cut out the part where Trump told supporters to protest peacefully and patriotically. The edit didn't just shorten the speech, it created a new meaning that didn't exist in the real version, and it sat there quietly for over a year, until an internal whistleblower exposed it. That leak turned one questionable edit into a full-blown international scandal. Once the memo hit the press, Trump's legal team basically teleported into action. They sent the BBC a letter accusing them of creating a deliberately misleading clip and slapped down a deadline. Apologize, retract, and pay up or get sued for $1 billion. The BBC caved halfway. They apologized. They admitted the edit created the wrong impression. They pulled the documentary permanently. But they refused to hand over a penny. To Trump, that was basically a confession with no consequences. And so he escalated, announcing a lawsuit worth up to $5 billion, framing it as a duty, not a choice. According to him, if he didn't sue, it would just keep happening. The line was drawn in permanent marker. Now, here's where it gets even messier. Two of the BBC's most powerful leaders, the Director General and the head of BBC News, suddenly stepped down. Both blamed the scandal. Both said they were taking responsibility. For a public broadcaster, that's a nuclear-level implosion. And Trump immediately celebrated online, saying their resignations proved he was right. At that point, the BBC wasn't just facing a lawsuit. It was leaderless, embarrassed, and in damage control mode. All right, T-Squad. The next part gets deep into the legal battlefield, and it's honestly the most fascinating piece of this whole saga. If you're into stories where politics meets media power, hit like and subscribe, it helps more than you know. Now, let's talk law. Trump isn't just suing, he's suing in Florida where the documentary was available online. But here's the catch. For Trump to win, he has to clear one of the highest bars of all time, the actual malice standard. He has to prove the BBC knew the edit was false or didn't care whether it was false. That's not easy. Even showing the edit was sloppy isn't enough. Trump's side will lean heavily on the apology, the admission that the edit was misleading, the whistleblower memo, and they'll argue it shows intent or at least reckless behavior. The BBC will fire back with, "It was an error, not a plot." The speech was broadly similar anyway. Trump's reputation couldn't be damaged more than it already is. Oh, and the biggest one. Prove you lost $5 billion because of this one documentary. Good luck with that. The incident didn't happen in a vacuum. The BBC was already dealing with accusations of bias and internal tension. The edit lit a match in a room full of gasoline. Critics said it exposed systemic manipulation. Defenders said it was a one-off mistake in an underfunded newsroom stretched too thin. But either way, trust took a hit. When the BBC's credibility cracks, even a little, the shockwaves are enormous. This is where it turns into a political circus. Trump immediately used the scandal as evidence of fake news. Critics of the BBC used it to argue the broadcaster is biased. Supporters of the BBC warned the lawsuit is really about weakening the press. And the UK government had to walk a tightrope defending the BBC as an institution, while not pretending the edit didn't happen. This case is no longer about just one speech. It's about who gets to define the truth, media or politicians. So T-Squad, here's where we land. A single editorial decision sparked a $5 billion lawsuit, toppled the BBC's top leadership, and reignited a global war over media trust. Trump says the BBC's apology proves intentional wrongdoing. The BBC says it was a terrible mistake but not a malicious one. This isn't just about a documentary anymore. It's about the future of journalism, political power, and whether news organizations can survive these kinds of battles. Do you think this lawsuit is a justified response to reckless editing? Or a political strategy designed to break a major news institution? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear what the T-Squad thinks. And before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe. We've got so much more to spill. Keep sipping that tea.